only 10, but next order of business is a workshop for the town manager's annual review. Board to conduct a workshop for the purpose of the town manager's annual review for the period running from October 2016 through October 2017. Now, each member of the board did an independent review, and they were submitted to our HR Director, Candace Hall, and as per the procedure that the board voted upon, Candace and I were to aggregate that and put together a composite document. Now, that composite document is, 5 pages long. I'm not going to read it all to you. It would just take too long, but it will be available. This is the, it will be available for review at some point. It becomes a public document. There were nine different criteria. Maybe I could just give you each of those criteria. This is on a score of 1 through 5. 1 being unsatisfactory, the manager's work performance is inadequate and inferior to the standards of performance. 2 would be improvement needed, the manager work performance does not consistently meet the standards. 3 would be meets expectations, the manager's work performance consistently meets the standards of the position. 4 exceeds expectations, the manager's work performance is frequently or consistently above the level of a satisfactory employee. And 5 would be excellent, highly commendable, the manager's work performance is consistently excellent when compared to the standards of the job. So that's 1 through 5. The composite document, basically there are 2 pieces to the composite document. The first piece is basically and you add up the scores. So it's very numerical. Candace, please, if I make a faux pas here, just jump in and or throw something at me, and I'll be more than happy to. But it's one of them is very numerical. We look at all the various scores that each of us, there are 38, I believe, quite different criteria that we rate the town manager on, and each one of the criteria is that rating from 1 to 5, which I just read to you. Then there's another piece of the document because there is a narrative as well. That narrative, each one of us were able to not just rate the town manager on each of those criteria, but we were also rated, we also numerically rated them, but we also were able to have a narrative. The composite document, which this is what takes the time, is to take all of the comments from the 5 of us, see where we agree on certain things and disagree on certain things, and to have a final narrative that is a composite of what all 5 are. So it's not any one selectman's view of the document, of the evaluation, but it is a composite of all 5. So it's no one of us is represented completely in that document, but all 5 of us are represented in the composite. That was compiled by Candace. Took a couple of days to work on this and put together a document that she and I reviewed together. We made, I think, 5 or 6 changes along the way. Some of them were minor, some of them were major, and we added and subtracted things to come up with what I believe to be the final composite document is a good representation of those. I'm just going to, because I don't want to read the whole narrative because it's 5 pages long, I'll just read each category. Personal characteristics, 3.28 was the score. Now, remember, that is meets expectations. Meets or exceeds expectations, I believe that is. Professionalism, 3.53. Meets. It's meets.
Yeah, 3.0 is meets. Yeah, when you review the rating scale.
The category is professionalism, 3.5. Well, the first one was.
Do you want to review the rating scale just for the?
I just did.
Did he? Oh,
Yeah,
I didn't.
I read it all off.
like one is unsatisfactory.
Yeah,
two is-
You just did them, yeah.
Wow, I missed that.
Yep.
Wow.
Okay, Dan. Personal characteristics, 3.28. Public relations, communications, professionalism, 3.53. Public relations, communications, 3. Board support relations, 2.96. Community leadership, 3.5. Organizational leadership, personnel management, 3.24. Financial management, 3.57. Planning and organization, 3.3. Overall rating, 2.6. And the composite rating of all of it is 3.22, which meets expectations. So that is the composite document. It is a matter of record, and I'm not sure if anybody wants to speak to anything further beyond this, but if you do, Bob?
Sure.
Start off?
Yep. So before I read, and I'm not going to read the whole thing, obviously, I'm just going to read a few excerpts. I want to make it clear something that we've been talking about leading up to this review, which is that this composite document, the raw material for this composite document are the individual reviews that every selectman here was required to submit. There were requests for us to release these in advance, and we were advised that we could not do that. And the advice that we've been given, which I'm following right now, is that in order to make this a public document, I'm going to reference it and read some excerpts from it. So that's another reason why I'm going to be kind of referencing it in my effort to make this a public document. And I certainly hope the rest of my board follows my lead. If nothing else, to make all 5 reviews public. I don't think there's anything more important than transparency where everybody's review in detail can be shown.
I just one question about that,
Sure.
just to say on that topic, Town Council. Can we just release our own, or do we have to actually comment during the meeting?
You have to refer to it.
Okay, all right.
It has to be,
Good question.
Fair enough, okay.
So either read from it or
I plan on releasing mine, I
Yeah.
just, that's the...
you can just declare and say.
You have to refer to
Yeah.
it during the meeting.
Right.
Okay, so I'm referring.
So the plan is, if we're all going to do that, we will all, just
Understood.
one by one.
And I'll be brief, because everybody
fine.
needs to speak, and I won't go
Yep.
into too much detail. I'm probably going to bring down the curve here for our town manager, and it personally hurts me to do so, because when we hired Andrew, his first year, looking here, I categorize his first year in office exceeded all expectations. I mean, OPEB, health insurance reform, municipal service facility, long-term planning model. I could not have been happier. I think I gave him 5s across the board last year. And this year, unfortunately, in my view only, I've seen a dramatic drop in performance in a number of these different categories. So just quickly, under the category of professionalism, communication, and board relations, there's been a number of residents and even local media that have complained about the lack of responsiveness from the town manager, and quite frankly, even as a board member, I experienced some of that myself. The town manager in his self-evaluation, I believed, talked about that he had developed mutual trust and respect with all board members. I take some exception to that. There were a couple examples, which I won't go into a lot of detail on, but the issue of nonprofit use of public property, I think, could have been kind of really handled better by the town manager, so it didn't become the issue it became in the community. The Dascom Road project and the MassWorks grant, all the surrounding details of that, I think that could have been just managed much better, much more transparently for the sake of the entire board. Under the category of financial management, in my review, I expressed a number of concerns about the town manager's performance relating to management. I had given him great credit last year for a long-term planning model, which finally set a 5-year and beyond look for all of our key financial issues. And yet I feel the town manager's actions this year kind of undermined his credibility on that really important issue. And the 2 examples I point out to is his support. He was involved in teacher contract negotiations. The teacher contract is by far the largest expense, the largest agreement we have in town. And in my personal view, support for that agreement kind of really undermined any credibility of arguing for long-term financial planning. Techniques I think the town manager used to bridge school budget gaps and using overlay funds, again, in my view, just kind of went the wrong direction of where we want to be on fiscal responsibility. The Wood Hill High Plain access ramp, I mean, I just personally thought it was inexcusable, something that really had a lot of attention in the community, was a real priority, is a really important issue to help our kids with disabilities access the playing field from the school. I just, without going through the details, I just thought that was just not handled well and could have been done a lot better. And then finally, just the North Reading Water Agreement. And again, this period we're talking about only goes up to October of 2017. But, that does include the time that I've been very transparent about where I felt the terms of the deal and the termination provision and the omission of it was not clearly represented. And for me, that's that's kind of a major issue of trust in my town manager. So there's more in here, which anyone can read when it's posted. But my overall rating, the only category here that's unsatisfactory is a 1. So my overall rating of the town manager was a 1 because I think his overall performance was unsatisfactory. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Dan?
Well, I'm going to take a different approach than Bob. I'm going to comment a little bit higher level on some things. I don't know how many times, Andrew, we've met and we've had coaching sessions, working together, and how many times I've said, I want you to be successful. Because if you're successful, the town of Andover is successful. So I think that's very important. I'm going to refer to mine and it'll become public, but it took me a long time to fill this out. And I changed some scores. I went back and forth on some things, but I gave you 1-1, and that was in the area of strives to maintain good staff morale and maintains open, honest, professional relationships with staff. That was 1-1 that I gave you, and we've talked about staff morale and whatnot, and anyway, you got 5s, you got 4s, you got 3s, you got some 2s. Every one of my sections, and it says it at the beginning of this, I think only 2 selectmen chose to make comments in each of the sections, whereas all the selectmen kind of chose to make some comments at the end, I think it's important to explain, at least a blurb about each rating. So really, on every one of my ratings, I put some positive comments on some of the positive ratings, but I put comments on some of the ratings that weren't so great. I'm sorry?
No, just
He's talking to himself.
Oh, okay. I think last year, I think I gave you mostly 5s across the board and maybe some 4s in there. I can't recall, honestly. And this year, it spans the board. I made a comment of, I think the honeymoon's over, and it's time to really dig down into the meat of Andover, and it became much more complex in year 2. I think one of the challenges that you really had was in the area of board support and engaging the board. And I think back to us sitting outside of Ultimate Perk and kind of you and I chatting before you were hired, saying the biggest thing that you have to learn in this job is to manage up. And I remember you saying to me, well, I came from complex organizations and, Arlington and whatnot, and Dan, don't worry about it, I can manage up, paraphrasing, of course. And I think, and I know we've had some coaching sessions on how to manage up, and I think that was one of your biggest inhibitors to success this year, is your ability to manage up. And the time that each individual selectman consumed of you made it difficult for you to be as successful as you could have been. I remember coming into your office and you just saying to me once, this has been one of the most complex weeks of my career. And it's because of the selectmen. The selectmen are board of directors. We've got to really try to stay up here and enable you to do your job. And I think that we, the board, and as a whole, inhibited that ability to help you do your job as good as you could have. We've talked about it. Laura and I were there, and we had that conversation with you. It's like, how much time should you be spending on the Board of Selectmen? How much time should you be spending with your senior staff? And how much time should you be spending on strategy? And I think you were spending too much time with the Board of Selectmen, whether it's one-on-one with individual selectmen, or whether it's, us dealing with our stupid little questions about, well, where's that $2,000 go? And sometimes we get into the weeds a little bit. But, you've got some, certainly some areas of growth. In regards to this this review period, my biggest concern was not communicating the $95,000 issue in the North Reading deal. That happened in September. So I guess that was in the term. So I'm okay bringing that up. But that was my biggest concern.
smiling, so you're
That
okay.
was my biggest concern because, I need to rely on my town manager to disclose everything to me. I shouldn't have to read that document. I shouldn't have to look and recognize, oh, gee, that document's missing that phrase from the last version. I need you to tell me that. This is a part-time job for me, and it should be a part-time job for all of us. Shouldn't be our primary focus, really. We've hired you to run the town. If we don't like the way you're running it, then we deal with that. But we can't, a board, this board, future board, can't consume all of his bandwidth because he's not going to be able to be successful if that's the case. And it's, I rated you an overall of 2, because in my opinion, there needs to be a significant uptick in performance this coming year. Positives, I look at your financial management skills as your biggest strength. People might not agree with a specific decision that you make, but, or maybe the way you go about doing it, but I think that's your greatest strength is your financial management skills, and I really appreciate that. I think that the complex town that Andover is, the very demanding town that Andover is, the demanding Board of Selectmen that you have, it's a tough job, and, I as a resident, I as a selectman would be looking for some improvement, and hence I rated you 2. But, I put a lot of thought into this, and I don't, it's not mean, anything like that, but I tried to be very constructive in my comments to you. And, I'll look back to all of our reviews last year. How many constructive comments were there in all of our reviews? I mean, go back and read your individual review of the town manager last year. I remember putting in some constructive feedback, and if I recall correctly, reading some of them, I don't remember. Sorry about that to you.
So-
I don't remember seeing a lot of that constructive.
praise, yeah.
It was all praise. Hey, you're doing a great job. But you know what? It's really incumbent upon us to enable him to do his job, to make sure that we can give that positive feedback, and you give the constructive feedback, and we don't do it all at once. You need to take it, you need to listen to it, you need to grow with it, and you need to prove to us that you are Andover's town manager, and that you are the one that should be Andover's town manager. You've got a very capable staff. You've got a bigger staff than the prior town manager has. You've done some organizational changes, which I think are good. Buzz at one point I think had 19 direct reports. I don't want to see you work until 10 o'clock every night. You need to have a life. So anyway, I again will end with, if you're successful, the town of Andover is successful, and I want you to be successful.
Can I ask you if you referenced that document?
Well, let me just, so there's no question,
Do you
let me
wanna
highlight
reference
one
that
that
document? You wanna
let me
reference the
highlight
document?
one
Okay.
so that we can be sure that I referenced it, is Section 4, Board Support, Board Relations, D. Listens and understands selectmen's concerns. I gave you a 2. And I said D2, the town manager needs to better manage up. I think the town manager could have been more successful in 2017 if he had if he had not had to spend an inordinate amount of time actioning upon the requests of demanding selectmen. That's what,
Okay, so you
very
referenced the
clear.
document, you referenced the document, so now
Yes.
it's going to be a public
You were
document.
public so far?
That was,
Huh? Okay.
did I do good?
We have both public so far.
All right,
there you
good.
go. Dan, that was very thoughtful, thank you. Laura? No, you can eat cold.
No, I thought maybe I'd be last, or second to last. So I submitted mine back in February, and mine is only based on half of a year because I've only been on the board during half of the period. There are a number of things that I did not feel like I had adequate data or experience with the town manager to respond to. So the references in the overall memorandum to one selectman that didn't have enough information, that's me. Overall, I gave the town manager a 3, and I recognized his strengths as finances and budgeting, and for areas of improvement, I included communications of difficult and confusing issues, improvement in diffusing difficult situations with residents. I could add at this point maybe with board members, and probably all of us could use that. And following through on requests of the board without requiring follow-up from the board members. And hopefully I've now had adequate reference to mine so that it's become a public document as well.
Do you, Candace, you can make that, you don't have a public, you don't have a piece of paper there, so.
Right, I don't,
Okay.
I didn't print it, I can,
But we
I'll
have the
get
original,
that.
okay, so we can make them public.
Or she can print the one I emailed.
Selectman Visboli.
Yes, sir. Definitely a different year from the first year, for a bunch of different reasons. I'll start where I thought there were areas for improvement, and I also took the approach of looking at this as a constructive document, to look forward, to highlight things that I think you can improve upon, to put yourself in a better, more effective situation, and a lot of it does have to do with dealing with this board. And I think there's things. So let me just go over the areas where I think it can be improved. And if you look at my statements in each one, it's more in what can you do to improve this different area. So I'll talk about communications with the board. I thought that some of it's been said already, but I think we have a common theme here. So I'd like to see a regular, improved, formal method of keeping the full board informed of key information, not just the chair. And this was seen in the discussions, whether it be with the North Reading Agreement and some of the other issues that have been talked about. Recognize the need in requesting additional support. Use of delegating your team to ensure a fast response to board inquiries. We do have a good team here in place, and I think you can delegate more effectively with some timelines back. I think you've had a tendency to capture everything yourself, and I found myself having to ask several times for answers. I should put personal development in. This is something we talked about when you were hired, and it was actually mentioned by somebody that knows you when we did some reference checking, was to make sure that at some point you enroll in a management training continuing education program. I'd like to see you propose something to the board that would bring you to the next level. We all have regular continuing education requirements in our positions, most likely, and I think you would benefit from some kind of a graduate level management seminar course. Certainly, we've got the best in the country here in Boston, whether it be a Sloan School or Harvard Extension. So I'd like to see something. I think you'd benefit of that. Certainly, and I think Bob brought this up, or the ramp at Woodhill High Plain got derailed, and certainly there was an opportunity to really get that done the right way, and it was just that was a big gap there, the way that got interrupted. I'd like to see a continued focus on the reduction of the property tax rate increase during the preparation of the budget, so that we don't have to continually ask for how does this affect the tax rate and the tax levy, something that's important to me. This should be part of the CIP discussion in December, so that along the time that we are looking at what does this do to the increase to our tax rate. And on the last piece, and I'm reading from so this is public, because I'm reading from my document here.
I was going to ask you that.
Yes,
but
I'm doing it, as I said I was going to do it. One of the things that I think is a catch-all for a lot of the things, concerns I've had, is a timely response to resident concerns and question. I'd like to see, and I've mentioned this before, some type of system implemented to track residents' concerns or questions. This would include the time for the town manager's office to respond and to track the resolution. This would allow us to monitor and track issues that are brought up to the town and how we've been able to get them resolved. This would allow us to monitor the progress of open items that might need further escalation. So it's a system in place of residents and when they have issues. So those are the areas, some of the areas for improvement. Let me talk about the strengths that I thought you bring to the table. Certainly, as it's been said, I think your financial acumen for the town's financial long-term health and an eye on that is certainly something that was your strength. And when we selected you for our town manager, that was one of the things that really stuck out that we were interested in, because we know as we move forward, we're going to have significant challenges from a financial standpoint, and we need to make sure that we're looking at the long-term viability and health of our community. Your commitment to the role is demonstrated by your participation in activities outside the normal working hours. Clearly, you attend different events, economic events, social events within the community, and a lot of work with our large businesses in town. You've taken a lead in civic activities and are visible and accessible to Andover residents. You've taken a lead in something that had been stagnant for a while, and that's Andover's investments in playgrounds, which has been well received by the community. Your focus on trying to improve resident customer satisfaction when customers requesting services or help. This is almost at odds with the one I mentioned before as far as the issues, but I think the focus that you've put in the time period for this review shows a commitment to customer experience and customer satisfaction. I realize the proof is in the pudding and that something has to be implemented, but clearly this year you have put a focus on that with your team. And I want to mention also something that, just closing on the strengths, is your hiring process. And we talked a little bit about that before, but the whole assessment center and just some of the hires that you've made, which stand out. And there's a couple that stand out, notwithstanding the deputy town manager and our data analyst, and that's our director of community service and our director of senior services. I'm a liaison for the director of seniors for the senior services team, and I can see how Ann Mary has really taken that up a level and from where it was before. And certainly director of community services Joe Connolly, anytime he's assigned something, he's able to run with that kind of self-starter standpoint. We saw that with some of the work he's done with the Chinese American community in town. So that's those are my strengths. I started with the improvement piece and then the strengths. So there's a lot there on both sides.
Great.
And I did comment on each section.
Thoughtful document. Good job. Okay, so
Your overall was,
oh yeah, your overall was 3, right?
It was a 3. I was going back and forth, to be honest with you. I struggled with that 2 or 3, but I ended up coming in when I did my averages. I tried to average the numerical. I wish there was a something in between a little
yeah,
bit, to be
it's
honest
kind of like
with
a
you.
gut feel versus
Well,
looking at
first I
everything.
did, then I did use it numerically. I went back and forth a few times.
Yeah.
Okay, so my comments basically are, after a listen and learn first year, Andrew has taken some initiatives this year that have been exciting, bold, and in some cases controversial. The launch of a comprehensive new website breaking ground and breaking ground for new municipal services facility, and the big picture look at the historic mill district would be classified as exciting. The collaboration with the Board of Selectmen, School Committee, and FinCom to develop a long-range, multi-year financial plan, finally settling long overdue collective bargaining contracts, and the requirement for the management team to issue a 5-year CIP projection are all bold initiatives. Finally, the town manager has undertaken an overall interdepartmental review to seek methods of delivering more cost-efficient and productive services throughout the organization. Change can sometimes be met with resistance, and his efforts have been viewed by some as too aggressive. The solution is, and as it is most of the time, somewhere in the middle. Although Andrew's efforts have been ambitious and sometimes uncomfortable, I believe he carried out these changes in a professional manner, and that his goals and intentions have always been to make the organization better. Recognize strengths. The town manager's obvious strengths are in municipal finance, which most of us share this. He's brought clarity, creativity, and collaboration. Under Andrew's direction, Andover has maintained a AAA bond rating and been recognized for budget excellence. Andrew's creativity in planning CIP and building projects have given our boards a clear path to bringing many of these projects to a reality. Bringing a balanced budget to town meeting has been an ongoing challenge for many years. Andrew's collaborative efforts with the superintendent, school committee, and FinCom has resulted in a much more open and understanding process. The use of an assessment center, which we've all talked about several times, to seek independent hiring assessment and input from department heads is particularly innovative and effective screening process. Town manager's work ethic, which I can attest to. Being chair for the last 2 years, I can tell you this guy is available 24/7, 365, and if it was late leap year, he'd be 366. And he'll tell you that many times I have to tell him that he works too hard and to try to take a little bit of private time. His constant availability and hard work is one of his best strengths. Town manager is under constant stress from other board members' requests for information. There are also private citizens that send a constant stream of email and public information requests. Although this is an enormous time drain, Andrew handles the task well and manages his time accordingly. But I would say that we need to really look at how we, and I think to your point, Alex, all of those requests, all the requests for information from board and citizens need to be looked at in the coming year. My overall assessment was a 4. Now, I say it was a 4, probably more ambitious than most, but I've had the pleasure of being chair and working very closely with Andrew, and that becomes I have a much closer look at many of the things that he does. So that's the assessment. That's my final. If there's-
Paul, just for the record,
Sure.
that was from your individual
Yes,
performance
yeah.
appraisal, so it's
Yeah. It
all
is a public
5
record.
selectmen.
Happy.
based on-
Happy to be a public record.
Good. That's
Yep.
important.
Yep, happy to be a public record.
So if I may,
Yes,
if
I
I
would
might
love for you to.
thank you.
I
No,
know-
I
I know
have.
one of the reasons we forwarded that we is to give you a chance to look at it and.
I have 4.5, 5 pages of organizational accomplishments that I had planned to read this evening, but given the late hour, I'll transmit them for the record by email. But really the purpose was not to talk about my individual achievement, but really what the organization has achieved over the past year in really all functions of government. And it's something that I'm certainly proud of, and I think this board should be very proud of as the elected body of the organization. The list is long, from financial management, investment in capital. In the fall, we will move into our new municipal services facility, affectionately known as the New Town Yard. Still working on the official title, but obviously unlock great potential in the historic Mill District. We've made and continue to make historic investments in playgrounds, in water infrastructure, increased our funding for sidewalks, and I'm pleased this year's budget, FY19, what's going to be considered at town meeting, achieved so many goals, expand services, and is the lowest increase in nearly a decade.
I am proud that we built our reserves consistent with the plan that we put in place several years ago. They do pale in comparison to our unfunded liabilities, but they do provide a safeguard for the uncertain and are there for uncertain times. In some other areas, our human resources, I have to acknowledge the people that work in this organization. We continue to invest in them, in their professional development, in the retention and the recruitment of highly qualified personnel. We consistently and constantly get a return on our investment. This past year, we've invested a great deal in leadership development programs for people at all levels of the organization, specialized trainings in public safety, library science, technical service, and organizational behavior. We've had employees accepted into competitive programs at the Kennedy School of Government, at Harvard, and the Darden School of Business at the University of Virginia. And like I said, we continue to see a return in the investment, and I think in the quality of work that the individuals produce here at the town of Andover. Alex alluded to it, and I appreciate the fact. Andover certainly continues to be the leader in Merrimack Valley in the field of community and human services. This past year, I assembled the Elder Services Task Force, who's worked nonstop looking at housing, transportation, tax relief, and senior programming. We've expanded senior programming to Senior Center. We're open 6 days a week opposed to the 5. We've expanded programming. You go in there any day of the week, and it is a busy place. Youth and recreational services continue to provide services to our youth and our cornerstones of who we are in Andover. I'd like to acknowledge Soban Namvar. Andover was faced with a problem in 2015, and he has continued to establish statewide recognition and has distinguished himself and Andover as the leader in the area of community support services. A great example of the community coming together. Kid care, another great example. Residents came to us and say, we have a need for affordable aftercare for our residents. Joe Conley and his team said, we can do it. We filled the program in 20 minutes of beginning registration. We're expanding the program. Another example of success. I'll move forward through these quite quickly and then conclude. But economic development, the board challenged us to streamline permitting. We this year successfully transitioned to online permitting and consolidated the permitting experience in order to promote business development in Andover. The efforts really have paid off. We have our third year of new growth exceeding 2 million. Pfizer and Raytheon have made significant investments in their campuses here over the past 18 months. Fun fact, Andover over the past year has become the home to the first and second largest clean energy companies in Massachusetts. And we will continue to establish, to listen to our businesses and create an experience that they're looking for to relocate here. We continue, and maybe most importantly, based on the feedback I've heard, are communicating and engaging with the public like never before, meeting the demands. They want to be heard, they want to receive information, and I believe we're providing it in a way that meets the demands of today. So it's the organizational success has certainly been a testament of the aggressive agenda set by this board and the goals and objectives of the board, but also the commitment and work ethic of the staff here at the town. So one thing that I've learned that while both necessary and inevitable change is difficult and at times has been uncomfortable. I'll continue to look to implement systems of accountability as I believe that as custodians of taxpayer dollars, we're responsible for continuously to evaluating programs and exploring potential efficiencies. To conclude, thank you for your constructive feedback. I will put it to use. I'm a subscriber to the belief that the best leaders are those who listen and learn. I'll continue to listen and learn from our community as we work together in the coming months and years to build a stronger organization. We'll begin to have a lot of community discussions in the coming months about developing a real solution-based strategic plan to face the challenges that we all know lie ahead, because it's going to require a community effort. So I know that working together, I'm excited about the future, and I'm confident that Andover will continue to be a leader, not only in Merrimack Valley, but in the Commonwealth. So again, thank you for the time you've taken to participate in the process, providing me the opportunity to participate, and I look forward to a successful year. So thank you.
Great. Thank you. Okay, this is a workshop, so there is no public participation, but we move on to the next order of business, which is would you consider to vote to hold a Purpose 2 executive session to conduct strategies in preparation for negotiations with non-union personnel or contract negotiations with non-union personnel.
I have the motion here. Oh.
Okay?
I move that the selectmen go into executive session to conduct strategy in preparation for negotiations with non-union personnel or contract negotiations with non-union personnel, specifically the town manager, and not to return to open session.
Okay, it's been moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Roll call.
Oh, yes.
It is roll call for executive session.
Yes.
Is it roll call for, to
Roll
go
call. It's a
into?
roll, it's a roll call to go into executive session.
To go into, okay. Bob?
Yes.
Dan?
Yes.
Laura?
Yes.
Yes.
Alex, yes. Paul? No. Okay. So we are into an executive session.